Before you take the step, God has already made the way. There are moments in life when you step into something and later realize it didn't begin when you arrived. It began long before the prayer you whispered in desperation, before the decision you wrestled with, before you even understood where God was leading you. This is one of the most humbling truths of walking with God. He often clears the path before you ever take the first step. Even when you feel unsure, delayed, or surrounded by questions, God is already at work ahead of you. He is arranging what you cannot see, softening hearts you haven't met, removing obstacles you would never have known were there, and preparing outcomes that depend not on your strength, but on His faithfulness. The silence you fear is not inactivity. It is divine movement hidden from human sight. The silence you fear is not inactivity. It is divine movement hidden from human sight. You may be standing at a crossroads right now, wondering if you missed something, wondering why progress feels slow, wondering why the way forward isn't obvious. But Scripture reveals a God who goes before His people, who makes crooked paths straight, who sends provision ahead of need, and who prepares victory before the battle even begins. What feels uncertain to you is already known to Him. What feels blocked to you has already been addressed in heaven. Sometimes God clears the path by removing what would have harmed you. Sometimes He clears it by delaying you until the timing is right. Sometimes He clears it by shaping you first, because the road ahead requires a version of you that hasn't fully formed yet. And often you don't recognize His work until you look back and realize how protected, guided, and carried you truly were. If you're listening to this with a sense that something is unfolding in your life, even if you can't explain it, take heart. God does not ask you to walk blindly. He asks you to trust that He is already there, already moving, already making a way. And as you begin to understand how God clears the path before you even walk it, your fear will give way to faith, and your hesitation will be replaced with peace. Let's step into this truth together. Number 1. God goes before you even when you feel uncertain. There are seasons when uncertainty surrounds you, like fog. You pray, but the answers feel quiet. You take steps, but the direction feels unclear. And yet Scripture reminds us again and again that God does not wait for clarity to move. He moves first. Long before you feel confident, long before you feel ready, God is already ahead of you, preparing what your faith will one day step into. Uncertainty does not mean God is absent. In fact, it often means He is most active. When the Israelites stood at the edge of unfamiliar territory, God did not ask them to understand the road ahead. He promised to go before them. When Abraham was told to leave everything familiar, God didn't give him a detailed map. He gave him His presence. This is how God works. He leads not by removing uncertainty, but by walking ahead of it. You may be questioning your next step right now, wondering if you're choosing correctly, wondering if you're behind schedule, wondering if the path you're on will actually lead somewhere meaningful. But what you don't see is that God has already stepped into your tomorrow. He has already prepared the conversations, the opportunities, the protection, and the provision you will need when you arrive. Sometimes God allows uncertainty because certainty can make us rely on ourselves. Uncertainty pushes us to trust Him. It teaches us to lean on His guidance rather than our own understanding. And while your mind may be searching for answers, your spirit is being trained to trust. So, if the way forward feels unclear, don't assume the path is unprepared. God does not wait for you to feel brave before He moves. He clears the way while you are still learning to trust Him. And when the time comes for you to walk forward, you'll discover that what once felt uncertain has already been made secure by the One who went before you. Number 2. God removes obstacles you never even see. One of the most powerful truths about God's guidance is that much of His work happens beyond your awareness. While you're focused on what you can see, God is dealing with what you can't. He is removing obstacles you would never recognize, protecting you from paths that would have harmed you, and fighting battles you didn't even know were forming. There are moments when things don't work out, plans fall apart, or doors quietly close, and you feel disappointed or confused. But later, sometimes much later, you realize that what you thought was a setback was actually a rescue. God was removing something from your path before you ever reached it. He was sparing you pain, confusion, or compromise that would have delayed your purpose. Scripture is filled with moments where God intervened invisibly. Enemies were confused before battles began. Traps were dismantled before his people stepped into danger. Provision appeared before hunger had time to consume them. This is the nature of a God who watches ahead. He doesn't wait for you to stumble before he acts. You may never know how many times God redirected circumstances, softened resistance, or blocked unseen threats on your behalf. And that's okay. Faith isn't built on seeing everything, it's built on trusting the one who sees everything. If you're frustrated because something didn't happen the way you hoped, pause before assuming it was a loss. Ask yourself if God might have been protecting you. Ask yourself if the delay, the detour, or the disappointment was actually divine intervention. God's protection is not always dramatic. Often it's quiet, subtle, hidden, but it is constant. And when God clears obstacles you never see, he is proving this truth. You are never walking alone, and you are never walking unguarded. The path before you is safer than you realize, because God has already been there. Number 3. God aligns people, places, and timing ahead of you. One of the most remarkable ways God clears your path is by aligning details you could never coordinate on your own. Long before you arrive, God is arranging people, positioning opportunities, and setting timing with precision that goes beyond human effort. What feels like coincidence is often God's careful orchestration unfolding exactly when it needs to. You may step into a season and suddenly encounter the right person at the right moment. A conversation opens a door you didn't even know existed. A relationship forms that strengthens you, challenges you, or guides you forward. These moments are not accidental. They are prepared. God is a master of alignment, weaving together lives and circumstances so that his purposes unfold naturally, not forcefully. Scripture shows us this pattern repeatedly. Ruth met Boaz at precisely the right time. Esther was positioned before she ever knew the danger that was coming. The disciples crossed paths with Jesus, not by chance, but by divine appointment. God always prepares the meeting before the moment arrives. If you're waiting for clarity, don't underestimate what God is already aligning. Timing matters more than speed. God knows when you are ready, when others are ready, and when circumstances are ripe for movement. When we rush, we risk stepping ahead of what God has prepared. When we trust, we arrive right on time. You might feel delayed right now, watching others move ahead while your path feels slow. But what you don't see is the careful preparation happening behind the scenes. God is making sure that when you step forward, you will not walk alone, unprepared, or unsupported. So when things begin to align unexpectedly, don't be surprised. Recognize it for what it is. Confirmation that God has been working ahead of you. The path you walk will feel steady, not because it's easy, but because it has been prepared with intention, wisdom, and perfect timing. Number 4. God closes the wrong doors before you reach them. Few things feel as discouraging as a closed door. Plans fall through. Opportunities disappear. Paths you were excited about suddenly come to an end. In those moments, it's easy to believe something has gone wrong. But often a closed door is not rejection, it is protection. God, in his mercy, closes paths that would have led you away from his best. He sees outcomes you cannot foresee. He understands consequences you cannot anticipate. And rather than allowing you to walk into harm, confusion, or compromise, he gently blocks the way before you ever arrive. Scripture reminds us that God forbade certain journeys, redirected plans, and prevented his people from moving forward until the right path was revealed. Not every opportunity is an invitation. Not every open door is meant to be entered. Sometimes God's greatest guidance comes through prevention. You may have prayed for something that didn't happen. You may still be wondering why it didn't work out. But what if that closed door saved you from unnecessary pain? What if it protected your faith, your peace, or your purpose? What if God was sparing you from something that looked promising but would have cost you more than you realized? Closed doors test our trust. They ask us to believe that God's wisdom is greater than our desire. They teach us to release what we cannot force and wait for what God will freely give. If you're facing disappointment right now, don't rush to reopen what God has shut. Instead, ask Him what He is protecting you from and what He is preparing you for. Because when God closes the wrong doors ahead of you, He is not limiting your future. He is preserving it. Number 5, God prepares you internally before the path appears. Before God reveals the path, He often works on the person who will walk it. This is one of the hardest truths to accept, because we tend to focus on what's next instead of who we're becoming. But God is far more concerned with your character than your comfort, your maturity than your momentum, and your depth than your speed. There are seasons when it feels like nothing is happening externally, yet everything is happening internally. God is reshaping your heart, renewing your mind, strengthening your faith, and refining your obedience. He is teaching you patience, humility, discernment, and trust, qualities you will need when the path finally opens. Scripture shows us that preparation always precedes movement. David was anointed long before he was appointed. Joseph carried a promise long before he stepped into authority. Moses spent years in the wilderness before leading others through it. God does not rush preparation, because unprepared hearts crumble under the weight of fulfilled promises. If you feel hidden right now, overlooked or delayed, understand this. God may be building capacity within you. The path ahead may require strength you don't yet possess, wisdom you haven't fully developed, or faith that can withstand pressure. And rather than placing you there too soon, God lovingly prepares you first. This internal work is sacred. It protects you from pride, burnout, and misplaced identity. It teaches you to rely on God rather than outcomes. And when the moment finally comes to step forward, you will walk with stability instead of fear, clarity instead of confusion. So don't despise the season of becoming. God is not withholding direction. He is forming the person who will walk in it. When the path appears, you'll realize the preparation was part of the miracle all along. Number 6, God makes a way where none seems possible. There are moments when the path ahead doesn't just feel unclear. It feels impossible. You look forward and see barriers, not bridges, dead ends, not doors. And yet, Scripture reveals a God who specializes in making ways where none appear to exist. God's greatest demonstrations of power often come when human solutions run out. The Red Sea did not part until there was no other escape. The walls of Jericho did not fall through strategy, but obedience. Provision in the wilderness did not arrive through planning, but dependence. God waits until the impossible is undeniable, so that His hand is unmistakable. If you're facing an impossible situation right now, don't assume you've reached the end. You may be standing at the very place where God is about to reveal His power. The absence of options does not limit God. It invites Him. When God clears a path through impossibility, He doesn't always remove the obstacle immediately. Sometimes He asks you to step forward before the way is visible. Faith often comes before clarity. Obedience often precedes understanding. And when the way opens, it becomes a testimony, not just to others, but to you. You remember that it wasn't your strength, your wisdom, or your timing that carried you through. It was God. So if the path ahead looks impossible, lift your eyes. God is not intimidated by barriers. He is not restricted by circumstance. He is the one who makes roads in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. When he clears the way, you will walk forward knowing that only God could have made it possible. Number 7. God confirms the path through peace, not pressure. When God clears your path, he does not drive you forward with fear or force you ahead with anxiety. He leads you with peace. This is one of the most overlooked yet most reliable signs of God's guidance. The world pushes. Fear rushes. Pressure demands immediate action. But God confirms his will with a peace that settles your spirit even when circumstances are uncertain. You may not have every answer. You may not see the full picture. But deep within, there is a quiet assurance that says this is the way. That peace does not come from logic. It comes from alignment. It comes from knowing that God has already gone before you, and that you are not stepping into chaos, but into preparation. Scripture reminds us that God is not the author of confusion. When something is from him, it draws you closer to trust, not panic. It anchors you rather than agitates you. Even when the path requires courage, God's peace steadies your steps. It does not eliminate challenge, but it removes the torment of uncertainty. Pressure, on the other hand, often disguises itself as urgency. It tells you that if you don't act now, you'll miss everything. It feeds fear of loss, fear of falling behind, fear of disappointing others. But God does not lead his children through fear. He leads them through faith. If you're facing a decision right now, pay attention to what is guiding you. Is it peace or is it pressure? Is it trust or is it fear? God's cleared path may not always be easy, but it will always be accompanied by a sense of rightness in your spirit. And sometimes, God gives peace before he gives confirmation. He gives assurance before evidence. That peace is not actional. It is a signal. It is God's way of telling you that the ground ahead is secure, that the timing is right, and that the path has already been prepared. When you learn to follow peace, you learn to walk confidently into what God has already cleared. And even when the journey stretches you, you will know deep down that you are exactly where God intended you to be. Conclusion: trust the God who is already there. There comes a moment when you look back and realize that what felt uncertain was never unguarded. What felt delayed was never denied. What felt confusing was never unmanaged. God was there before the step, before the struggle, before the breakthrough, clearing the path long before you understood where you were going. Every closed door, every unexpected delay, every moment of preparation, every quiet season of growth was part of his mercy. He was protecting you from what you couldn't see, aligning what you couldn't arrange, and shaping you for what you were not yet ready to carry. God did not wait for you to figure everything out. He went ahead of you in love. If you are standing at the edge of something new, unsure of what comes next, take heart. God is not asking you to walk blindly. He is asking you to trust that he is already there. The path you fear may already be cleared. The step you hesitate to take may already be secured by his hand. You don't have to rush. You don't have to force doors open. You don't have to carry the weight of outcomes. Your responsibility is not to see the whole road. It is to trust the one who prepared it. So take a breath, release the fear, let go of the pressure, and step forward in faith. Because when God clears your path before you even walk it, every step becomes an act of trust. Every delay becomes a gift, and every arrival becomes a testimony. If this message spoke to your spirit, take a moment to reflect and share what God may be preparing in your life. And if you want more faith-filled, encouraging, and spirit-led content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Someone else needs this reminder today, and your engagement can help bring it to them. God is already there. Walk forward with faith.